Imagine a creature alive today that was swimming through dark ocean waters when Shakespeare was writing his plays. Picture an animal that began its life before the American Revolution, before the invention of electricity, before humanity had even dreamed of flight. These aren't myths or legends. They're real animals, living right now, measuring their existence not in decades, but in centuries. Welcome to Bedtime Biology, where science meets serenity. Each night, we explore the quiet wonders of the natural world, calming your mind and sparking your curiosity. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and commenting below if you have any feedback or suggestions for topics of future episodes. Tonight, we're entering a realm where time moves differently, where a human lifespan is just a brief moment in an animal's centuries-long journey. We'll discover creatures that were born when empires still ruled the world, when horse-drawn carriages filled city streets, when the modern world was barely imaginable. Some of these animals experience aging so slowly that scientists describe them as practically immortal. Others possess cellular machinery so sophisticated that they seem to defy the very laws of biology that govern the rest of us. As we explore their stories, you'll find yourself questioning what you thought you knew about life, death, and the passage of time itself. The answers these ancient creatures hold might just change how we understand aging altogether. The ocean's oldest resident, deep beneath the waves off the coast of Iceland, where sunlight fades to perpetual twilight and the water stays frigidly cold year-round, something extraordinary was living. It wasn't moving much, barely noticeable against the seafloor, just a simple clam filtering water through its shell the way it had done for longer than most of us can imagine. This was no ordinary mollusk. This was Ming, an ocean quahog clam that had witnessed more human history than any creature has a right to see. In 2006, researchers trawling the seafloor accidentally pulled Ming from its home. At first glance, it seemed unremarkable, just another clam among many, its shell measuring a modest 3.5 inches across. Dark and weathered, it looked like any other member of its species, Arctica islandica, the ocean quahog. But when scientists began examining it more closely, counting the growth rings that circled its shell like the rings inside a tree trunk, they realized they had found something unprecedented. The initial count revealed the clam to be somewhere between 405 and 410 years old. Already, this made it the oldest individual animal ever documented. But the story wasn't over. 7 years later, in 2013, researchers decided to re-examine Ming using more sophisticated techniques. They focused on the growth rings along the hinge ligament and combined their visual counts with radiocarbon dating, the same method used to date ancient artifacts and archaeological finds. The new results were staggering. Ming wasn't 405 years old. It was 507 years old, give or take a year or two. Let that sink in for a moment. 507 years. This clam had begun its life around 1499, during the Ming dynasty in China, which is how it earned its nickname from journalists. When Ming settled onto the Icelandic seafloor as a tiny larva, Leonardo da Vinci was in the middle of his career, painting masterpieces and sketching flying machines. Christopher Columbus had returned from the Americas just 7 years earlier. The world Ming was born into had no electricity, no cars, no airplanes, no computers. It predated the entire scientific revolution, the Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution. every major shift in human civilization over the past 5 centuries happened while this clam quietly filtered plankton from the cold North Atlantic waters. The tragedy of Ming's story lies in how it ended. To accurately count those growth rings and determine the clam's age, researchers had to open its shell, a process that killed it. The animal that had survived 507 years of ocean storms, predators, changing sea temperatures, and shifting ecosystems, died in the process of revealing its remarkable age to us. It's a bittersweet irony that scientists acknowledged with regret. But Ming's death wasn't entirely in vain. The clam's shell has become an invaluable climate archive, each growth ring preserving a record of ocean temperatures and conditions going back half a millennium. Ocean quahogs live throughout the North Atlantic, from the icy waters around Iceland and Greenland down to the coast of North Carolina. They bury themselves in sediment on the seafloor, leaving just their siphons exposed to draw in water and filter out microscopic food particles. It's a simple life, almost meditative in its quietness. But it's that very simplicity, combined with the frigid environment they inhabit, that seems to enable their extraordinary longevity. In the coldest waters of British Columbia and Alaska, where temperatures hover just above freezing, these clams grow incredibly slowly. The cold water slows their metabolism to a crawl, meaning their cells divide more slowly, accumulate damage more slowly, and essentially age more slowly than animals in warmer environments. Scientists studying Ming and other long-lived ocean quahogs have discovered that these animals have developed remarkable defenses against the cellular damage that typically causes aging. Their cells appear to have enhanced DNA repair mechanisms and better protection against oxidative stress, the kind of molecular damage that occurs when unstable molecules, called free radicals, attack cellular components. It's as if evolution has equipped them with better maintenance systems, allowing them to keep their cellular machinery running smoothly for centuries while other animals' bodies break down after mere decades. What makes Ming even more scientifically valuable is that each growth ring doesn't just mark another year, it records the ocean conditions during that year. By analyzing the chemical composition and isotopes in each ring, scientists can reconstruct ocean temperatures year by year, going back 507 years. This gives climate researchers an unprecedented window into how the North Atlantic has changed over centuries, long before humans began systematically measuring ocean temperatures. The rings show periods of warming and cooling, changes in ocean chemistry, and shifts in food availability. Ming lived through the Little Ice Age, a period of global cooling that lasted from roughly 1600 to 1850. The clam's shell recorded those cold years in narrow growth rings, then showed wider rings when temperatures rose again. But perhaps what's most humbling about Ming is the realization that there are probably older clams still out there, living undisturbed on the ocean floor. Ming was special because we found it, examined it, and learned its age. But scientists believe that in the deep, cold waters of the North Atlantic, there could be ocean quahogs even older than 507 years, quietly filtering water just as their ancestors have done for countless generations. These ancient mollusks represent the longest individual lifespans ever documented in non-colonial animals. They remind us that some lives are measured not in heartbeats or breaths, but in centuries of patient existence. The ocean quahog's longevity raises profound questions. What is it like to experience time so differently? While humans rush through decades, achieving our life goals in the span of years, these clams barely notice the passage of time at all. They don't have complex brains to contemplate their existence. They simply filter, grow, and persist. Yet, in their slow, deliberate biology lies a secret that has allowed them to outlast human empires, scientific revolutions, and technological transformations that would seem like magic to someone from the year 1499. And all the while, Ming sat on the seafloor off Iceland, adding one tiny ring to its shell each year, a living chronicle of our changing planet. The shark that lives longer than nations. In the black depths of the Arctic Ocean, where the sun disappears for months at a time and the water stays perpetually cold, a massive shadow drifts through the darkness. It moves slowly, almost lazily, at less than 1 mile per hour, the kind of pace that makes a sleepy human's walk seem frantic by comparison. This is a Greenland shark, one of the ocean's most mysterious and ancient inhabitants. These enormous predators can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weigh more than a ton, but it's not their size that makes them extraordinary. It's their age. Scientists have known for a long time that Greenland sharks grow incredibly slowly, adding less than a centimeter to their length each year. This glacial growth rate suggested they might be long-lived, but without a way to accurately determine their age, it remained speculation. Traditional methods for aging sharks, counting growth rings in vertebrae or fin spines, don't work for Greenland sharks. Their bodies lack the hardened tissues that form clear growth bands. Their vertebrae are soft, more cartilage than bone, and they don't develop the distinct yearly rings that scientists can count in other shark species. For decades, these sharks kept their age secrets locked away. The breakthrough came from an unexpected place, a murder investigation in Germany. A physicist named Jan Heinemeier had been working on radiocarbon dating techniques for forensic purposes, specifically trying to determine the ages of murder victims by analyzing proteins in their eye lenses. The proteins that make up the lens nucleus are formed before birth and remain stable throughout life, making them perfect time capsules. When marine biologist John Fleng Stephenson learned about this technique, he realized it might work for Greenland sharks. If they could radiocarbon date the proteins in a shark's eye lens, they could estimate when that shark was born. Stephenson and his team spent years collecting dead Greenland sharks, most of them accidentally caught as bycatch in fishing nets targeting other species. Between 2010 and 2013, they gathered 28 female sharks, ranging from young individuals to massive adults over 16 feet long. Then came the painstaking work of extracting their eye lenses and analyzing the carbon isotopes in the lens nucleus. They were specifically looking for carbon-14, a radioactive isotope that increased dramatically in the atmosphere during nuclear weapons testing in the 1950s. Any shark born after the bomb tests would have elevated carbon-14 levels in its tissues. The results, published in the journal Science in 2016, stunned the scientific community. The largest shark in their study, measuring over 16 feet long, was estimated to be 392 years old. Give or take 120 years. Even at the conservative lower estimate of 272 years, this made Greenland sharks the longest living vertebrates known to science, easily surpassing the previous record holder, the bowhead whale. The upper estimate of 512 years seemed almost impossible to believe, yet the data supported it. This shark could have been born as early as the late 1500s, during the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, when Shakespeare was just beginning to write his plays. Think about what 400 years means. A Greenland shark alive today could have shared the Arctic waters with explorers searching for the Northwest Passage in the 1600s. It would have been swimming through the deep when the American colonies declared independence, when Napoleon crowned himself emperor, when the Industrial Revolution transformed human society. It would have witnessed 2 world wars from beneath the waves, completely unaware of the turmoil happening on the surface. And through all of it, the shark just kept swimming, slowly, steadily, through the cold Arctic darkness. But perhaps even more remarkable than their maximum lifespan is how long it takes Greenland sharks to reach sexual maturity. Based on the sizes of pregnant females and the growth rate data, researchers estimate that female Greenland sharks don't become capable of reproduction until they reach about 13 feet in length, which happens at approximately 156 years of age. Let that sink in. These sharks spend over a century and a half just growing up. A Greenland shark born at the same time as the American Civil War is only now reaching reproductive age. This extraordinarily delayed maturity has profound implications for their conservation. Any shark caught and killed before age 150 has never had a chance to reproduce, never contributed to the next generation. The secret to their longevity seems to lie in the extreme environment they inhabit. Greenland sharks live in some of the coldest marine waters on Earth, typically at depths where temperatures hover around -1 degree Celsius, just barely above freezing. At these temperatures, all biological processes slow down dramatically. The shark's metabolism runs at a crawl, conserving energy and reducing the cellular wear and tear that accumulates over time in warm-blooded animals, or animals living in warmer waters. Their heart rates are incredibly slow. Their movements are deliberate and energy efficient. They don't rush toward prey or dart away from threats. Instead, they glide through the water with the patient confidence of an animal that has all the time in the world. Recent research has also revealed that Greenland sharks possess remarkable genetic adaptations for longevity. In 2024, scientists sequenced the full genome of a Greenland shark and found multiple copies of genes involved in DNA repair and inflammation control. These genetic tools help the sharks maintain their cellular integrity over centuries, fixing damage before it can accumulate into age-related dysfunction. They also appear to have enhanced mechanisms for preventing cancer, which makes sense when you consider their enormous size and extreme longevity. Larger animals have more cells, which means more opportunities for mutations that could lead to cancer. Yet Greenland sharks seem to have evolved ways to suppress tumor formation, even over periods of time, that would give most animals' cellular repair systems a thorough beating. There's something almost eerie about encountering a Greenland shark in the wild. They move through the water like ghosts, their pale grey bodies blending into the dim Arctic light. Most of them are partially or completely blind, their eyes damaged or covered by parasitic copepods that attach to the cornea and hang there like grotesque decorations. These parasites, called Omatocoita elongata, are found on nearly every Greenland shark. Some scientists have speculated that the copepods might actually help the sharks by creating a small amount of bioluminescence that attracts prey, though this remains unproven. Regardless, the sharks don't seem bothered by their eye parasites. They rely more on smell and hearing than vision anyway, hunting in darkness where eyes provide little advantage. What do Greenland sharks eat? Pretty much anything they can catch or scavenge. Their stomachs have been found to contain seals, fish, squid, and even the remains of moose, horses, and polar bears, though these land animals were likely already dead when the sharks found them. Greenland sharks are opportunistic scavengers, happy to feed on carcasses that sink to the ocean floor. But they're also capable predators, using their sluggish swimming speed to their advantage by approaching sleeping seals from below, then lunging upward to seize them before they can react. Perhaps the most humbling aspect of Greenland shark longevity is how much we still don't know. These animals spend most of their lives in remote, inaccessible parts of the ocean, at depths where human observation is difficult and expensive. We don't know exactly how many Greenland sharks exist. We don't know their full range of behaviors or their complete life history. We're only beginning to understand the genetic and cellular mechanisms that allow them to live so long. Every new study reveals more questions than answers. But what we do know is that somewhere in the Arctic Ocean right now, there are sharks swimming that remember a world before modern civilization. Sharks whose lives span entire eras of human history. Sharks that carry within their bodies the secrets of how to endure across centuries. The whale that survived 19th century whalers. On a spring day in 2007, Inuit whalers in Alaska made a discovery that would rewrite what we thought we knew about animal longevity. As they carved up a freshly caught bowhead whale, a biologist working with the hunters noticed something unusual embedded in the blubber near the whale's shoulder blade. It was a piece of metal, corroded and old, jutting from the thick layers of fat that insulate these Arctic giants. When the fragment was carefully extracted and sent to a whaling historian for analysis, the verdict was astonishing. This was an exploding lance, a type of harpoon used by 19th century whalers, manufactured sometime between 1885 and 1895. The whale had been carrying this weapon fragment for over a century. When that harpoon struck, the American Civil War had ended just 20 years earlier. The Wild West was still wild. The first automobiles wouldn't be invented for another decade. And this whale, already several years old when the hunter's lance failed to kill it, had simply kept swimming, season after season, decade after decade, century after century. Based on the harpoon's age and the whale's size, researchers estimated this particular individual was at least 115 years old, possibly 130. It had lived through more human history than most people's great-grandparents. This wasn't the first time old weapons had been found in bowhead whales. Since 1981, Inuit hunters had discovered at least half a dozen whales with harpoon fragments embedded in their bodies, relics from the height of commercial whaling that nearly drove these giants to extinction. Each discovery provided tangible proof that bowhead whales routinely live well over a century, making them the longest-lived mammals on Earth. But how do scientists confirm these ages when simple physical evidence, like an old harpoon, can only tell part of the story? The answer lies in the whale's eyes. Just as with Greenland sharks, researchers have used specialized techniques to age bowhead whales by analyzing proteins in their eye lenses. These proteins contain amino acids that exist in two mirror image forms, left-handed and right-handed. When a bowhead whale is born, the amino acids in its eye lens are 100% left-handed. But over time, these molecules slowly convert to the right-handed form at a predictable rate, a process called racemization. By measuring the ratio of left-handed to right-handed amino acids, particularly one called aspartate, scientists can calculate how long ago the eye lens formed. Using this technique on eye lenses collected from whales caught during legal subsistence hunts, researchers have confirmed that bowhead whales regularly live past 100 years, with the oldest individuals reaching or possibly exceeding 200 years. One whale examined using this method was estimated at 211 years old. These aren't outliers or rare exceptions. The data suggests that living past a century is normal for bowhead whales, assuming they can survive the numerous threats they face from predators, disease, ship strikes, and entanglement in fishing gear. Bowhead whales are perfectly built for life in the Arctic. Their massive, barrel-shaped heads, which account for about a third of their total body length, are uniquely adapted for breaking through thick sea ice when they need to surface and breathe. The name bowhead comes from this distinctive skull shape, which curves upward like an archer's bow. These whales can smash through ice more than a foot thick, creating breathing holes in places where other marine mammals would suffocate. They lack a dorsal fin, which would be a hindrance when swimming beneath ice, and instead have a smooth back that slides easily under frozen surfaces. But perhaps their most impressive adaptation is their blubber. Bowhead whales are wrapped in a layer of fat that can be up to 20 inches thick, providing insulation against Arctic waters that would kill most warm-blooded animals within minutes. This massive blubber layer serves multiple purposes. It keeps them warm, allowing them to maintain their body temperature even when swimming through water cold enough to form ice crystals. It provides buoyancy, helping them float and conserve energy, and it stores reserves of energy that can sustain them through periods when food is scarce. During the whaling era, this blubber was highly prized for oil production, driving hunters to pursue bowheads across the Arctic until populations crashed from fewer than 3,000 individuals. The cold environment that bowheads call home is likely key to their longevity. Just like Greenland sharks and ocean quahogs, bowhead whales have slower metabolisms than animals living in warmer waters. Cold temperatures require less energy expenditure for thermoregulation compared to the tropical heat that warm water whale species endure. This slower metabolism means slower cellular processes, which translates to slower accumulation of the molecular damage that causes aging. But metabolism alone can't explain their remarkable lifespans. Recent genetic research has revealed that bowhead whales possess something special at the DNA level. In studies examining the bowhead whale genome, scientists have identified genes associated with DNA repair, cancer suppression, and cellular maintenance that show signs of positive selection, meaning evolution has favored these particular versions of the genes. The whales appear to have enhanced mechanisms for fixing damaged DNA before errors can accumulate and cause problems. They also have multiple copies of genes involved in suppressing tumor formation, which makes sense when you consider their enormous size. A bowhead whale can reach 60 feet in length and weigh over 200,000 pounds. With that many cells in their bodies, the statistical probability of a cancerous mutation occurring somewhere should be astronomical. Yet these whales rarely develop cancer. Scientists studying their anti-cancer adaptations hope that understanding how bowheads suppress tumors might one day help us develop better cancer treatments for humans. There's an interesting trade-off that comes with these longevity adaptations. Research has shown that bowhead whales have relatively small reproductive organs for their body size, particularly males. The genetic changes that slow cell division and enhance DNA repair mechanisms, giving cells time to fix damage before replicating, may also affect fertility and reproductive development. Evolution always involves compromises, and it appears that bowheads have traded some reproductive capacity for the ability to live extraordinarily long lives. But given that these whales can potentially reproduce for well over a century, the strategy seems to work. A female bowhead that lives 200 years has far more opportunities to produce offspring than a whale with higher fertility that only lives 50 years. Bowhead whales are filter feeders, straining tiny crustaceans called copepods and other zooplankton from the water using baleen plates that hang from their upper jaw like massive curtains. These baleen plates, which can grow longer than 12 feet, are the longest of any whale species. The whales swim slowly through dense patches of plankton with their mouths open, allowing water to flow in and out while the baleen traps food. It's an efficient feeding strategy that requires relatively little energy expenditure, fitting perfectly with their slow-paced Arctic lifestyle. They don't need to chase prey or compete aggressively for food. They just swim steadily through plankton clouds, filtering hundreds of pounds of tiny organisms each day. Traditional Inuit knowledge has long held that bowhead whales can live for multiple human generations. Hunters would recognize individual whales by scars and markings, tracking the same animals over their own lifetimes and hearing stories from their elders about whales that had been seen for decades. These oral histories, passed down through generations, told of whales that seemed to never age, that appeared year after year during migration seasons, constant presences in a changing world. Western science took longer to accept what indigenous peoples already knew, but the evidence has become undeniable. Bowhead whales don't just survive for a long time, they thrive across centuries. When you think about a 200-year-old bowhead whale, you're thinking about an animal that has witnessed the complete transformation of the Arctic environment. It was born into a world where commercial whaling ships were just beginning to push into Arctic waters. It watched as those ships nearly exterminated its species, saw its population crash from hundreds of thousands to just a few thousand individuals. It survived the era when its oil lit lamps across Europe and North America. It lived through the end of commercial whaling, the establishment of hunting regulations, and the slow recovery of bowhead populations. And now it swims through an Arctic that's warming faster than any other region on Earth, where sea ice retreats further each summer, where the ecosystem it has known for 2 centuries is transforming before its ancient eyes. These whales carry more than just history in their bodies. They carry hope, their remarkable longevity, their sophisticated cellular defenses against aging, their ability to thrive for centuries in one of Earth's harshest environments. All of this represents biological solutions to problems that plague every animal on the planet. By studying how bowhead whales maintain their health across such extreme time spans, scientists hope to unlock secrets that could help humans age more slowly and healthily. the whale that survived a 19th-century whaling lance might one day help us understand how to extend not just lifespan, but health span, the years we spend in good health rather than declining in old age. The tortoise that outlasts civilizations. On the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic Ocean, there lives a giant tortoise named Jonathan. He arrived at the island in 1882 as a gift to the governor, already an adult at the time. Based on his size when he arrived and what we know about tortoise growth rates, Jonathan is estimated to have hatched around 1832, making him at least 192 years old as of 2024. He is recognized as the oldest known living terrestrial animal on Earth, and remarkably, despite his extreme age, Jonathan is still active, still eating, still wandering the governor's gardens where he spent most of his incredibly long life. Jonathan is a Seychelles giant tortoise, a species closely related to the famous Galapagos giants. When he was born, Andrew Jackson was President of the United States. The Victorian era hadn't yet begun. Photography was brand new. Steam engines were just starting to revolutionize transportation. Jonathan has lived through the entire industrial age, both world wars, the atomic era, the space age, the digital revolution, and now the age of artificial intelligence. He's older than the light bulb, older than the telephone, older than the automobile. He has been alive for more than 4% of all recorded human history since the invention of writing. And he's still going. But Jonathan isn't the oldest tortoise ever recorded. That distinction belongs to Adwaita, an Aldabra giant tortoise who lived at the Alipur Zoological Garden in Kolkata, India. When Adwaita died in 2006, researchers analysed his shell and determined he was approximately 255 years old, possibly even older. If this estimate is accurate, and scientists believe it is based on shell growth analysis and historical records, Adwaita hatched around 1750. Let that incredible number settle in. 1750 was before the American Revolution. Mozart was still a child. The Industrial Revolution hadn't started. Most of the modern world didn't exist yet, and this tortoise lived through all of it, ultimately dying in the 21st century from liver failure associated with extreme old age. How do tortoises achieve such remarkable longevity? The answer involves a combination of unique adaptations that work together to dramatically slow the aging process. First and foremost is their famously slow metabolism. Tortoises are ectothermic, meaning they rely on external heat sources to regulate their body temperature. Unlike warm-blooded mammals and birds that must constantly burn energy to maintain body heat, tortoises simply bask in the sun when they need warmth and retreat to shade when they need to cool down. This means their metabolic rate runs at a fraction of what a similar-sized mammal would require. Slower metabolism means slower cellular processes, which means less oxidative stress, less DNA damage, and ultimately slower aging. Recent research has revealed that tortoise longevity goes much deeper than just a slow metabolism. Studies of Galapagos and Aldabra, giant tortoise genomes, have identified multiple genetic adaptations related to longevity and disease resistance. These tortoises have extra copies of genes involved in DNA repair, meaning they can fix cellular damage more effectively than most animals. They also have enhanced immune system genes that help them fight off infections and diseases. Perhaps, most importantly, they possess sophisticated tumor suppression mechanisms. Tortoises almost never develop cancer, despite living so long and having plenty of time for cancerous mutations to accumulate. Their bodies appear to be exceptionally good at detecting and eliminating abnormal cells before they can develop into tumors. The tortoise's shell, that iconic protective armor, also plays a crucial role in their longevity. The shell, which is actually modified bone covered by plates of keratin, protects tortoises from most predators and environmental hazards. A fully grown giant tortoise has essentially no natural enemies except humans. This means they can age without the constant stress and injury that shorten lives in other animals. They don't need to run from predators or fight for survival in the ways that wear down faster-moving creatures. They can simply retreat into their shells and wait out danger. This passive defense strategy has proven remarkably effective over millions of years of evolution. Another key to tortoise longevity is their pattern of growth and reproduction. Unlike mammals that reach adult size and then stop growing, tortoises continue to grow slowly throughout their entire lives. This is called indeterminate growth. A young tortoise might grow several inches per year, but as it ages, that growth slows to barely perceptible rates. Yet, it never completely stops. A 200-year-old tortoise is larger than a 100-year-old, which is larger than a 50-year-old. This continuous growth is tied to their continuous reproductive capacity. Female tortoises can lay eggs well into their second century of life, showing no signs of the reproductive decline that affects most animals. There's no tortoise equivalent of menopause. A 150-year-old female can be just as fertile as a 30-year-old. This makes evolutionary sense. If you're an animal that can potentially live for centuries, investing energy in maintaining reproductive function pays off over the long run. A tortoise that can reproduce for 200 years will produce far more offspring than one that only reproduces for 20 or 30 years, even if the shorter-lived animal has more offspring per year. Natural selection has favored the slow and steady approach in these reptiles, and it's proven to be a winning strategy for survival. Tortoises also show remarkably little senescence, the biological term for age-related decline in function. Studies comparing young and old tortoises find that elderly individuals move just as well, eat just as much, and respond to their environment just as effectively as younger ones. Their organ systems don't seem to wear out the way mammalian organs do. A recent comprehensive study of aging in reptiles and amphibians found that many turtle and tortoise species show negligible aging, meaning their risk of death doesn't increase as they get older. A 150-year-old tortoise has about the same chance of dying in any given year as a 50-year-old tortoise. This is radically different from most animals, including humans, where the risk of death increases exponentially with age. The protective phenotype hypothesis suggests that this negligible aging evolved because tortoises have physical and chemical defenses that dramatically reduce their mortality rate from external causes. If you have a hard shell that protects you from predators, and you live in a relatively stable environment with access to food, your main cause of death becomes internal breakdown, the aging process itself. Natural selection can then favor genetic variations that slow aging, because any individual that ages more slowly will have more opportunities to reproduce. Over millions of years, this has resulted in tortoises that barely age at all by mammalian standards. Modern research on tortoise longevity isn't just about satisfying curiosity. Scientists studying these ancient reptiles hope to apply what they learn to human health and aging. The mechanisms that tortoises use to maintain cellular integrity across centuries, their enhanced DNA repair, their cancer resistance, their lack of age-related organ decline, all of these could potentially inspire new medical treatments. Understanding how to activate similar pathways in human cells might one day help us not necessarily live as long as tortoises, but live healthier for longer, delaying or preventing age-related diseases like cancer, cardiovascular disease, and neurodegeneration. There's something profoundly peaceful about watching a giant tortoise move through its day. They eat slowly, munching on grass and leaves with methodical patience. They walk slowly, each step deliberate and unhurried. They breathe slowly, their massive lungs expanding and contracting at a measured pace. Everything about them embodies the concept of taking one's time. In our fast-paced modern world, where we rush from one thing to another, always feeling like there's not enough time, tortoises remind us that a different kind of existence is possible. An existence measured not in minutes and hours, but in seasons and centuries. An existence where patience isn't just a virtue, it's a survival strategy. The ancient glass structures of the deep, in the freezing darkness of the Antarctic seafloor, where temperatures hover just above the freezing point of seawater and sunlight never penetrates, there exist creatures so old they make even the longest-lived tortoises and whales seem young by comparison. These are the glass sponges, stationary filter feeders, that have perfected the art of patience on a timescale that defies human comprehension. Some specimens are estimated to be over 15,000 years old, making them not just the oldest individual animals on Earth, but among the oldest living things of any kind. Glass sponges, technically known as hexactinellids, are strange creatures even by the standards of the deep sea. They're barely animals in the way most people think of animals. They don't have brains, hearts, digestive systems, or any of the organs we associate with complex life. Instead, they're essentially colonies of specialized cells working together, built around a skeleton made of pure silica, the same materials that makes up glass. This skeleton grows in intricate geometric patterns, creating structures so delicate and beautiful that they look like they were crafted by a master sculptor rather than grown by a living organism. In many species, the skeleton forms a lattice-like cylinder or vase shape, sometimes reaching several feet in height. The oldest known glass sponge is Anoxicalix jubini, sometimes called the giant volcano sponge because of its cone-like shape. These massive structures, which can grow up to 6.5 feet tall and 5 feet in diameter, are found in the deep waters around Antarctica. They live at depths of 1,000 to 6,000 feet, in an environment that remains stable year-round. The temperature never fluctuates more than a degree or two. The water pressure is constant. There are no seasons down there, no storms, no variation in light, because there's no light to vary. It's one of the most unchanging environments on Earth, and glass sponges have adapted to it by becoming essentially immortal barring accidents. How do scientists determine the age of something that lives for 15,000 years? They can't exactly tag a sponge and come back in a century to measure its growth. Instead, researchers use the sponge's own body as a record of time. Glass sponges grow by adding layers to their silica skeletons, similar to how trees add growth rings. But because glass sponges grow so incredibly slowly, these layers are microscopic. A sponge might add only a fraction of a millimeter to its skeleton each year. By carefully sectioning the skeleton and examining it under powerful microscopes, scientists can count these layers and estimate the sponge's age. One particularly well-studied glass sponge, a specimen of Monohaphis tuni, discovered in the East China Sea, was estimated to be 11,000 years old, based on the layers in its single giant spicule, the glass rod that anchors it to the seafloor and supports its body. This meant the sponge began growing around 9000 BCE, during the Mesolithic period of human history. When this sponge was young, humans hadn't yet invented agriculture. We were still hunter-gatherers, living in small bands, with no cities, no writing, no civilization as we know it. The entire arc of recorded human history, from the first Sumerian cities to the present day, has occurred during this single sponge's lifetime. But researchers believe that Antarctic glass sponges, like Anoxicalix jubini, live even longer. Estimates based on growth rate studies suggest these sponges can survive for 15,000 years, or possibly more. This means some sponges alive today began their lives during the last ice age, when glaciers covered much of North America and Europe, when woolly mammoths roamed the tundra, when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than they are now. These sponges have witnessed more planetary change than any other living creature, growing silently on the Antarctic seafloor while the world above transformed again and again. The secret to glass sponge longevity lies partly in their environment and partly in their fundamental biology. The Antarctic deep sea is one of the coldest, most stable habitats on Earth. Temperatures stay just above freezing year-round, which means biological processes proceed at an incredibly slow pace. A glass sponge's metabolism is so low it's barely detectable. They don't move, they don't hunt, they don't do anything that requires energy expenditure beyond the basic maintenance of cellular function and the slow, steady deposition of silica into their skeletons. They're essentially living architecture, complex structures that happen to be alive. As filter feeders, glass sponges obtain nutrients by drawing water through their bodies using tiny hair-like structures called flagella. Microscopic particles of food, bacteria, and bits of organic matter get trapped in the sponge's tissues and absorbed. The filtered water then exits through large openings in the sponge's structure. It's an incredibly efficient process that requires minimal energy. A sponge can filter vast amounts of water while expending almost no effort. In fact, studies have shown that some glass sponge species grow so slowly that they might go a decade without adding any measurable size at all. They're not dying, not struggling, just existing in a state of near stasis, patiently waiting for the occasional nutrient to drift by. This extreme longevity serves an important ecological function. Glass sponges, particularly in Antarctic waters, often grow together in dense aggregations that create reef-like structures. These sponge grounds provide habitat for countless other organisms: fish, crustaceans, mollusks, all manner of deep sea life. A single large glass sponge might host dozens of species living among its intricate skeletal framework. Because these sponges live so long and grow so slowly, they represent stable, long-term habitat structures that persist for thousands of years. Other organisms can evolve strategies around the presence of these ancient anchors, knowing they'll still be there generation after generation after generation. The sponges also serve as climate archives. just as ocean quahog clams preserve records of past ocean conditions in their shells. Glass sponges preserve climate data in their silica skeletons. By analyzing the chemical composition of growth layers, researchers can reconstruct ocean temperatures and conditions going back thousands of years. The 11,000-year-old Monohaphis chuni sponge, for example, revealed previously unknown temperature fluctuations in the East China Sea over millennia, including periods when the water warmed significantly, probably due to underwater volcanic activity. These ancient organisms are like living time capsules, holding information about our planet's past that exists nowhere else. The process of extracting this climate data requires painstaking work. Scientists must carefully section the sponge's silica skeleton, creating thin slices that can be examined under electron microscopes. Then, they analyze the ratio of different oxygen isotopes in each layer, which varies depending on water temperature when that layer formed. They also measure trace elements like magnesium and calcium, whose concentrations shift with temperature changes. Each microscopic layer represents a year or sometimes several years of growth, and by working backward through the layers, researchers can reconstruct a year-by-year record of deep ocean conditions stretching back millennia. This is invaluable data for climate scientists trying to understand long-term patterns and natural variability in ocean systems. What makes glass sponges particularly valuable as climate archives is that they live in the deep sea, where conditions are more stable than at the surface, but still reflect global climate patterns. Surface ocean temperatures can fluctuate wildly from season to season and year to year, making it hard to distinguish long-term trends from short-term noise. But deep ocean temperatures change more slowly and steadily, providing a clearer signal of underlying climate shifts. When a glass sponge shows a period of warming or cooling in its skeleton, that represents a real, sustained change in ocean conditions, not just a temporary fluctuation. And because these sponges can live for thousands of years in a single location, they provide continuous records from one spot over enormous timescales, something almost impossible to obtain any other way. Yet, despite their incredible age and scientific value, glass sponges face threats. Deep-sea trawling, where fishing nets are dragged across the ocean floor, can destroy sponge reefs that took millennia to form. A single pass of a bottom trawl can obliterate thousands of years of growth in seconds. The slow growth rate of glass sponges means that damaged reefs might take centuries or longer to recover, if they recover at all. Climate change also poses risks. Although deep ocean temperatures change more slowly than surface temperatures, they are changing. Glass sponges evolved in extremely stable conditions, and even small shifts in temperature or ocean chemistry could stress populations that have existed unchanged for thousands of years. There's something humbling about contemplating an organism that was alive during the Ice Age and is still living today. Glass sponges challenge our understanding of what it means to be alive, to persist, to endure. They don't think, don't feel, don't experience time the way we do. They simply filter water and grow infinitesimally slowly, year after year, century after century, millennium after millennium. They are survivors in the purest sense, having found an ecological niche so stable and a survival strategy so efficient that they can persist essentially unchanged while the world transforms around them. They remind us that life doesn't always mean action and energy. Sometimes life means patience. Sometimes it means the ability to wait, to endure, to exist quietly in the darkness while eons pass overhead. The sea urchin that never ages. Along the rocky seafloors of the North Pacific, from Alaska down to Baja California, there crawls a spiny creature that scientists once thought lived for 7 to 15 years at most. This was the accepted wisdom about red sea urchins, those purple-spined balls of slowly moving invertebrate that graze on kelp and other marine plants. Then, in 2003, a team of researchers from Oregon State University and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory published a study that completely overturned everything we thought we knew about these humble ocean dwellers. Red sea urchins, they found, can live for well over 100 years. The largest individuals, specimens measuring nearly 8 inches in diameter, found in the cold waters of British Columbia, are estimated to be 200 years old or more. This revelation changed how scientists think about aging. But it wasn't just the longevity itself that shocked researchers. It was how these sea urchins age, or rather, how they don't age at all. Unlike virtually every other animal on Earth, red sea urchins show what biologists call negligible senescence. They don't get old in any meaningful sense. A 100-year-old red sea urchin is just as healthy, just as capable of reproducing, just as likely to survive another year as a 10-year-old sea urchin. There's no decline in function, no increase in mortality risk, no age-related deterioration. They simply exist year after year, growing slowly and steadily until something kills them, a predator, disease, or the actions of human fishermen. The research that revealed this extraordinary longevity used 2 independent dating methods that confirmed each other's results. First, scientists tagged individual sea urchins and injected them with tetracycline, a chemical that becomes incorporated into the skeleton and can be tracked to measure growth rates. Then, they used radiocarbon dating, analyzing levels of carbon-14 that increased in all living organisms following atmospheric nuclear weapons testing in the 1950s. Both methods produced the same conclusion. Red sea urchins grow incredibly slowly once they reach adulthood, adding barely a millimeter to their diameter each year. The mathematics were clear. The largest specimens weren't 10 or 15 years old. They were bicentenarians. Imagine what this means. A red sea urchin crawling along the ocean floor of Vancouver Island today could have begun its life in the early 1800s, around the time Lewis and Clark were exploring the western United States. It would have settled onto the rocky bottom as a tiny larva, no bigger than a grain of sand, and begun its slow journey through time. Year after year, it grew its spiny armor, grazed on kelp, and somehow avoided all the dangers that kill most sea urchins in their first year of life. It survived predation by sea otters, sea stars, crabs, and fish. It weathered storms, cold snaps, and periods of food scarcity. It kept growing, never stopping, never slowing its essential biological processes, never showing signs of the wear and tear that shortens lives in other animals. What makes red sea urchins essentially immune to aging? The answer involves multiple biological systems working in concert. First, like other long-lived cold water animals, red sea urchins benefit from living in chilly environments that slow their metabolism. The coldest waters off Alaska and British Columbia, where the largest and presumably oldest sea urchins are found, maintain temperatures near freezing year-round. Slower metabolism means cells divide less frequently, accumulate damage more slowly, and essentially tick along at a leisurely pace that accumulates less wear over time. But metabolism alone can't explain negligible senescence. Red sea urchins have something more fundamental going on at the cellular level. Recent genetic studies comparing long-lived sea urchin species like the red sea urchin to short-lived species have identified key differences in their genomes. Long-lived sea urchins have expanded families of genes related to innate immunity, giving them robust defense systems against infections and diseases. They also have more genes associated with sensory processing, possibly allowing them to better detect and respond to environmental threats. Most importantly, they show no age-related telomere shortening and maintain active telomerase in their somatic tissues regardless of age. Telomeres are protective caps at the ends of chromosomes that normally shorten each time a cell divides. In most animals, including humans, telomere shortening acts like a cellular countdown clock, eventually limiting how many times cells can divide and contributing to aging. But sea urchins maintain their telomeres throughout life, preventing this cellular clock from running down. They also continue to express telomerase, the enzyme that rebuilds telomeres in adult tissues. This is unusual. Most animals shut down telomerase expression in non-reproductive cells after development, presumably as a cancer prevention strategy. Sea urchins keep it active, allowing their cells to maintain their replicative potential indefinitely. Perhaps most remarkably, red sea urchins remain reproductively active throughout their extremely long lives. There's no sea urchin version of menopause or age-related fertility decline. In fact, the largest and oldest sea urchins appear to be the most prolific producers of eggs and sperm. A 200-year-old female can release millions of eggs during spawning season, just as effectively as a young adult. This continuous reproductive capacity is both a consequence and a driver of their negligible aging. If an organism maintains its ability to reproduce across centuries, natural selection will favor genetic variations that maintain overall health and function across those same centuries. The result is an animal that, from a biological standpoint, doesn't really get old. Studies examining age-related gene expression in red sea urchin tissues have found surprisingly few changes over time. While most animals show dramatic shifts in which genes are active as they age, with certain pathways declining and others becoming overactive, sea urchins maintain relatively stable gene expression patterns throughout their lives. Their muscle tissue, digestive system, and other organs show minimal age-related changes in function. Even their nervous systems, which in many animals accumulate damage and dysfunction with age, remain remarkably preserved. Research has found that aging red sea urchins actually upregulate genes involved in nerve protection and synapse formation, suggesting active maintenance of neural function even in extremely old individuals. All of this makes red sea urchins incredibly valuable as research models for understanding aging and longevity. They share about 70% of their genes with humans, far more than you might expect for such a different-looking organism. Studying how sea urchin genes interact to produce negligible senescence could provide insights into human aging and age-related diseases. If we can understand what allows sea urchin cells to maintain their integrity and function across 2 centuries, we might be able to develop interventions that slow human aging or prevent age-related decline. But there's a practical conservation concern here too. For decades, red sea urchins have been commercially harvested for their roe, which is considered a delicacy in Japanese cuisine. Fisheries managers initially set harvest rules based on the assumption that sea urchins lived only 7 to 15 years. Under those assumptions, taking the largest individuals seemed sustainable because those animals were supposedly near the end of their natural lives anyway. But if the largest sea urchins are actually 200 years old, removing them from the population removes the most successful reproducers, the individuals that have proven their ability to survive for centuries and are producing the most offspring. This could have serious consequences for population sustainability. The discovery of red sea urchin longevity has led to changed management strategies in some regions, with protections for the largest individuals and size limits on harvesting. But enforcement is difficult, and in some areas, populations continue to be overfished. It's a sobering reminder that organisms with extreme longevity are often particularly vulnerable to human exploitation. They evolved their life strategies in a world where making it to 100 or 200 years was an achievement that paid off in lifetime reproductive success. They didn't evolve to handle commercial fishing fleets equipped with modern technology that can remove centuries of accumulated genetics from the ocean in a matter of hours. When you see a red sea urchin in an aquarium or tide pool, remember that you might be looking at an animal older than any living human, older than any zoo elephant or captive whale, older than many of the trees in old-growth forests. That spiny, seemingly simple creature, crawling slowly across the rocks, carries within its cells the secret to something humans have sought for millennia: how to live without aging. It doesn't get weaker with time. It doesn't develop the diseases of old age. It simply persists, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, until something besides aging brings its remarkable life to an end. The biological secrets behind centuries of life. As we've explored these extraordinary animals, from 500-year-old clams to 15,000-year-old sponges, certain patterns emerge. These organisms don't achieve extreme longevity through luck or random chance. They've evolved specific biological mechanisms that allow them to maintain cellular function across timescales that seem impossible to us short-lived mammals. Understanding these mechanisms is one of the most exciting frontiers in biology today, with implications that reach far beyond simple curiosity about nature's record setters. The first and most obvious pattern is the correlation between cold environments and longevity. Almost all of the longest-lived animals inhabit cold waters or cold climates. Greenland sharks live in Arctic and subarctic seas where temperatures hover just above freezing. Ocean quahogs thrive in the cold waters of the North Atlantic. Glass sponges grow in the frigid deep sea around Antarctica. Red sea urchins reach their greatest ages in the coldest Pacific waters off Alaska and British Columbia. Even among tortoises, the longest-lived species tend to be those from cooler highland regions, rather than hot tropical lowlands. Why does cold matter so much? The answer lies in fundamental biochemistry. All chemical reactions, including the biochemical reactions that drive life, proceed more slowly at lower temperatures. This is a basic principle of physics and chemistry that applies universally. In a cold water animal, every cellular process, from DNA replication to protein synthesis to energy metabolism, happens more slowly than in a warm water relative. This slower pace of life means less cellular wear and tear over time. cells divide less frequently, reducing opportunities for errors during DNA replication. Metabolic byproducts that can damage cells accumulate more slowly. The entire biological machinery just runs at a more leisurely pace. But cold alone can't explain extreme longevity. Plenty of animals live in cold environments without reaching the ages we've been discussing. The second crucial factor is metabolic strategy. The longest-lived animals tend to have what biologists call low-energy lifestyles. They don't chase prey or flee from predators. They move slowly and deliberately. Red sea urchins crawl along the seafloor at a snail's pace, grazing on kelp. Glass sponges don't move at all. Ocean quahogs sit buried in sediment, barely expending energy beyond what's needed to filter water. Greenland sharks cruise through the ocean at speeds that make swimming look exhausting. Even giant tortoises, when they're not basking or eating, spend much of their time doing essentially nothing. This low-energy lifestyle is closely tied to metabolism. Animals with slow metabolisms produce less oxidative stress. The cellular damage caused by reactive molecules, called free radicals, that are byproducts of energy production. Every time a cell burns fuel to make energy, it generates these reactive molecules as a side effect. In high metabolism, animals like mice or hummingbirds, cells are constantly churning out energy and constantly dealing with oxidative damage. Over time, this damage accumulates faster than repair mechanisms can handle it, leading to aging and eventual death. Low metabolism animals produce less oxidative stress to begin with, allowing their repair systems to keep up with damage across much longer timescales. DNA repair mechanisms represent another crucial factor in extreme longevity. Recent genomic studies of long-lived species have consistently found evidence of enhanced DNA repair capabilities. Bowhead whales have extra copies of genes involved in fixing damaged DNA. Tortoises show signs of positive selection on DNA repair genes, meaning evolution has favored versions that work particularly well. Red sea urchins maintain active DNA repair across their entire lifespan. These repair mechanisms act like a maintenance crew, constantly fixing errors before they can accumulate into serious problems. This is particularly important when you consider how DNA damage typically drives aging. Every time a cell divides, there's a chance of copying errors in the DNA. Even when cells aren't dividing, DNA can be damaged by environmental factors, radiation, reactive molecules produced during metabolism, and simple, random chemical reactions. Over time, these errors and damage sites accumulate, causing cells to malfunction, organs to decline, and eventually the organism to fail. Animals with better DNA repair don't eliminate this damage entirely, but they fix it quickly enough that it never accumulates to dangerous levels. They essentially maintain their genetic instruction manual in readable condition across centuries. Cancer resistance is intimately connected to longevity, particularly in large animals. There's a famous puzzle in biology called Peto's paradox. The paradox is this: larger animals have more cells, which means more opportunities for cancerous mutations to occur. Yet, they don't have higher cancer rates than smaller animals. In fact, elephants, whales, and other large animals often have lower cancer rates than mice, despite having thousands of times more cells. The long-lived animals we've discussed take this to an extreme. A bowhead whale lives over 200 years with trillions of cells, yet rarely develops cancer. How is this possible? The answer involves tumor suppression mechanisms that have evolved in large, long-lived species. Bowhead whales have multiple copies of tumor suppressor genes, genetic tools that detect and eliminate cells showing signs of becoming cancerous. Tortoises have enhanced mechanisms for triggering cellular suicide in damaged cells before they can become problematic. The longer an animal needs to live, and the more cells it has, the more sophisticated its cancer prevention systems need to be. Evolution has equipped the longest-lived species with exceptional abilities to detect and destroy potentially cancerous cells before they can cause harm. Another fascinating mechanism found in some long-lived species is negligible senescence, the lack of age-related increase in mortality risk that we saw most clearly in Red Sea urchins. Most animals show what's called actuarial aging. As they get older, their risk of dying in any given year increases exponentially. A 70-year-old human is at much higher risk of death than a 30-year-old, and that risk continues climbing as age increases. But some animals, including certain tortoises, sharks, and sea urchins, don't show this pattern. Their mortality risk stays relatively flat across their lifespan. A very old individual has about the same chance of surviving another year as a middle-aged individual. Scientists are still working to understand exactly how negligible senescence works at the cellular level, but it seems to involve a combination of factors we've already discussed: low metabolism, excellent DNA repair, effective cancer prevention, and continuous cellular maintenance throughout life. These animals don't just live long, they maintain function across their extended lifespans. There's no period of decline, no frail elderly phase. They remain vigorous until something external kills them. Telomere dynamics also play an important role. In most mammals, including humans, telomeres shorten with age until cells reach a point where they can no longer divide, entering a state called senescence. These senescent cells accumulate in tissues, contributing to aging and age-related diseases. But long-lived species have found ways around this limitation. Some, like sea urchins, maintain active telomerase throughout life, preventing telomere shortening entirely. Others may have evolved mechanisms to prevent senescent cells from accumulating, or to better tolerate the presence of senescent cells without suffering negative consequences. The implications of this research extend far beyond academic curiosity. By understanding how these animals achieve extreme longevity, scientists hope to develop interventions that could slow human aging and prevent age-related diseases. If we can figure out how to enhance DNA repair in human cells, or how to improve our cancer prevention systems, or how to maintain telomeres more effectively, we might be able to extend not just lifespan, but health span, the period of life spent in good health. The goal isn't necessarily to make humans live for 200 years, but to ensure that the years we do live are spent in good health, rather than declining under the burden of age-related diseases. Some of the most promising research involves studying the specific genes and molecular pathways that differ between long-lived and short-lived species. By comparing the genomes of Greenland sharks to shorter-lived shark species, or Red Sea urchins to their brief-lived cousins, scientists can identify exactly which genes are associated with longevity. Many of these genes turn out to be involved in fundamental cellular processes: DNA repair, protein quality control, mitochondrial function, inflammation regulation. These aren't exotic mechanisms unique to weird deep-sea creatures. They're basic biological systems that exist in all animals, including us. The difference is that long-lived species have optimized these systems through millions of years of evolution. This means that in principle, we might be able to optimize similar systems in humans using drugs, gene therapies, or lifestyle interventions. Already, research has identified compounds that can enhance DNA repair, activate longevity-associated genes, or reduce cellular senescence in laboratory settings. These interventions are still far from clinical applications, but they represent the beginning of what could be a revolution in how we approach aging. Rather than treating aging as inevitable and focusing only on managing age-related diseases after they appear, we might be able to target the aging process itself, slowing it down and preventing those diseases from occurring in the first place. Some of the most exciting research involves understanding how long-lived animals maintain what scientists call proteostasis, the proper balance and quality control of proteins in cells. Proteins are the molecular machines that do most of the work in living cells, but proteins can become damaged or misfolded, losing their function or even becoming toxic to cells. In most animals, damaged proteins accumulate with age, contributing to cellular dysfunction and age-related diseases. Many neurodegenerative conditions, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, are fundamentally diseases of protein misfolding and accumulation. Long-lived species appear to have exceptionally good protein quality control systems. They can detect damaged proteins quickly and either refold them back into their proper shape or break them down and recycle their components. This proteostasis appears to be maintained throughout their lives, rather than declining with age as it does in shorter-lived species. Understanding the genetic and molecular mechanisms behind this superior protein maintenance could help us develop therapies for protein folding diseases and potentially slow aspects of aging related to protein dysfunction. Another area of intense interest is mitochondrial function. Mitochondria are the power plants of cells, generating the energy needed for cellular processes. But they're also major sources of oxidative stress because the energy generation process inevitably produces reactive oxygen species as byproducts. In most animals, mitochondria become less efficient with age, producing less energy while generating more damaging reactive molecules. This mitochondrial decline is considered a major driver of aging. Long-lived animals seem to maintain healthier mitochondria across their lifespans. Studies of Red Sea urchins, for example, show that their mitochondrial gene expression remains stable with age rather than declining, as it does in shorter-lived species. Bowhead whales have genetic adaptations that appear to protect mitochondrial function. These animals haven't eliminated oxidative stress entirely. That would be impossible as long as they need to produce energy. But they manage it better, either by producing less of it in the first place through more efficient energy generation, or by having better antioxidant defenses that neutralize reactive molecules before they can cause damage. The longest-lived animals are teaching us that aging isn't as inevitable as we once thought. It's not a universal law of biology that all organisms must decline with time. It's a variable process, one that evolution can modify and improve. And if evolution can do it over millions of years, perhaps we can do it over decades using the tools of modern biotechnology, guided by the wisdom written in the genomes of clams, sharks, whales, tortoises, and sponges that have been quietly demonstrating the possibilities for centuries. Other remarkable lives. Measured in centuries. While the animals we've focused on so far are the most extreme examples of longevity, they're far from alone in their ability to live for extraordinarily long periods. The natural world contains dozens of other species that routinely survive for a century or more, each with their own unique adaptations and strategies for defying the normal limits of animal lifespans. Consider the rough-eye rockfish, a deep-dwelling fish found in the cold waters of the Pacific from California to Japan. These pink or brownish fish live at depths where sunlight barely penetrates and temperatures remain consistently cold. Scientists have documented rough-eye rockfish living for at least 205 years, making them among the longest-lived fish species known. Like other long-lived animals, they grow slowly and inhabit stable, cold environments. Studies of rockfish genomes have identified genetic signatures associated with longevity, including enhanced DNA repair pathways and mechanisms for preventing cancer. A rockfish that hatched during the War of 1812 could still be swimming in the deep Pacific today. Geoduck clams, those massive burrowing mollusks found along the Pacific coast of North America, regularly live for more than a century. The largest geoducks, which can weigh up to 4.5 pounds and extend their siphons over 3 feet long, have been aged at over 160 years. The name geoduck comes from a Native American word meaning dig deep, which describes both their lifestyle buried in sediment and the effort required to harvest them. Like their ocean quahog cousins, geoducks achieve longevity through slow metabolism and life in cold water. They've become a valuable commercial species, particularly in Asian markets, but their extreme longevity means populations can be easily over-harvested if not carefully managed. Freshwater pearl mussels, found in clean, fast-flowing rivers across Europe and North America, can live for well over a century. Some individuals have been aged at over 250 years, making them the longest-lived freshwater invertebrates known. These mussels require very specific environmental conditions: cold, oxygen-rich water with low nutrient levels and stable gravel beds. They also have an unusual life cycle that depends on parasitizing fish during their larval stage. This complex set of requirements makes them excellent indicators of river health. When pearl mussel populations decline, it usually signals degradation of the entire river ecosystem. Even some domesticated animals can achieve remarkable longevity under the right conditions. Koi, the ornamental carp bred in Japan for their vibrant colors, can live for over 200 years in ideal conditions. The oldest verified koi on record, a fish named Hanako, died in 1977 at the estimated age of 226. Researchers determined her age by examining growth rings in her scales, much like dating trees by their rings. Hanako spent her entire long life in the same pond in Japan, tended by generations of the same family. Her story illustrates an important point. Many long-lived species achieve their maximum potential lifespan only when environmental conditions are optimal and stress is minimized. Among birds, several species can live for many decades or longer. Albatrosses, those magnificent seabirds with wingspans reaching over 11 feet, regularly live past 50 years in the wild, with the oldest known individual, a Laysan albatross named Wisdom, still breeding at over 70 years of age. Macaws, the large, colorful parrots of South and Central America, can live 60 to 80 years in captivity, and possibly even longer in the wild, where conditions are right. There's even evidence that a rare New Zealand parrot called the kakapo might be among the longest-lived birds. potentially reaching ages over 90 years. What's particularly interesting about long-lived bird species is that they tend to combine low metabolic rates with sophisticated brains and complex social behaviors. Birds are warm-blooded, which typically correlates with shorter lifespans compared to cold-blooded animals of similar size. Yet some birds achieve longevity that rivals or exceeds that of much larger mammals. Part of this may be due to their efficient metabolism and respiratory systems. Birds extract oxygen more effectively from the air than mammals do, and they have metabolic adaptations that reduce oxidative stress. They also tend to have lower body temperatures than similar-sized mammals, which again reduces metabolic rate. Among reptiles beyond tortoises, some crocodilians can reach impressive ages. Saltwater crocodiles, the largest living reptiles, can grow up to 20 feet long and weigh over 2,000 pounds. While exact maximum lifespans are hard to determine in the wild, some individuals in captivity have lived past 70 years, and there are unverified reports of wild crocodiles living well over a century. These apex predators combine slow growth, low metabolism, and effective immune systems to achieve their longevity. A large crocodile has few natural enemies and can maintain its health and reproductive capacity well into what we would consider old age. What all of these long-lived species have in common, whether they live in the ocean, in rivers, in forests, or in captivity, is that they've found ecological niches where the normal pressures that shorten animal lives are reduced or eliminated. They live in stable environments with consistent temperatures. They have defensive mechanisms, whether shells, size, or protective habitats, that reduce predation risk. They grow slowly and reproduce over extended periods, rather than rushing through a quick life cycle. And they've evolved cellular and genetic mechanisms that maintain function across timescales that seem impossible to species like ours, which evolved under very different selective pressures. The existence of so many long-lived species across such diverse groups, fish, mollusks, birds, reptiles, sponges, suggests that extreme longevity isn't some rare biological fluke. It's a viable evolutionary strategy that has arisen independently many times in the history of life. Whenever environmental conditions favor slow growth and delayed reproduction, whenever selective pressures reward individuals that can maintain health across extended timescales, longevity evolves. The same basic toolkit, DNA repair, cancer prevention, metabolic control, cellular maintenance, gets deployed again and again in different lineages, each time producing animals that measure their lives, not in years, but in generations of shorter-lived species. Time beyond human understanding. As we near the end of our journey through the lives of Earth's longest-lived creatures, it's worth pausing to consider what all of this means. These animals, these clams and sharks and whales and tortoises and sponges, they exist on timescales so different from ours that it's almost impossible to truly comprehend. When we talk about a 500-year-old clam or a 15,000-year-old sponge, we're using numbers that our minds can process, but that our experience can't really grasp. Think about your own life. Think about how long a year feels, how many experiences and changes can fit into 12 months. Now multiply that by 500. That's Ming the clam. Every year you've lived, Ming lived 500 times as long. Every decade of your experience, Ming lived through 50 of them. And the glass sponges? They've lived through more years than the entirety of human civilization. They began growing before we invented writing, before we built cities. before we domesticated crops or animals. They've existed through the rise and fall of every empire, every war, every achievement, every catastrophe in recorded history. And they've done it all while filtering water from the same small patch of Antarctic seafloor, completely oblivious to the tumultuous story of humanity unfolding thousands of miles away. This perspective shift, this sudden realization that we share our planet with organisms whose lifespan dwarfs our own, can be both humbling and inspiring. Humbling because it reminds us that we're just one species among millions, our individual lives brief flickers in the vast span of biological time. But inspiring because these animals prove that the limits we take for granted aren't universal. Aging isn't inevitable. Decline isn't necessary. There are ways to maintain function, to preserve health, to persist across centuries or millennia if the right biological mechanisms are in place. For most of human history, we've looked at aging as an unavoidable consequence of being alive. We're born, we grow, we reproduce, we decline, we die. That's the pattern we see in ourselves and in most of the animals around us. But the creatures we've explored tonight show us that this pattern isn't universal. Some animals barely age at all. Some show no increase in mortality risk as they get older. Some maintain their reproductive capacity and physical health across timescales that make a human centenarian look like a youngster. These organisms aren't magical or supernatural. They're just using biology in ways that evolution has refined over millions of years. The scientific study of these long-lived species is still in its early stages. We've only recently developed the tools to accurately age some of these animals. We're only beginning to sequence their genomes and compare them to shorter-lived relatives. We're just starting to understand the cellular and molecular mechanisms that enable their extraordinary longevity. But already, this research is changing how we think about aging, and potentially how we might address it in ourselves. Every long-lived animal is a natural experiment in longevity. Every species that has evolved to live for centuries has solved the same basic problems that limit our own lifespans: DNA damage, cancer, cellular senescence, metabolic decline. They've solved these problems in different ways, using different genetic tools and biological strategies. But the solutions exist. They're written in the genomes of clams and sharks and whales. They're demonstrated every day in the cells of tortoises that don't age and sea urchins that maintain fertility across centuries. And if we can learn to read these solutions, to understand them deeply enough, we might be able to apply that knowledge to our own biology. This isn't science fiction. It's not about achieving immortality or living forever. It's about understanding the fundamental processes that govern aging so we can slow them down, prevent age-related diseases, and extend the period of life spent in good health. If we can figure out how to help human cells maintain their DNA as effectively as tortoise cells do, we might reduce cancer risk and slow aging. If we can understand how bowhead whales suppress tumors so effectively, despite their size and longevity, we might develop new cancer therapies. If we can learn what allows red sea urchins to maintain their vigor across 2 centuries, we might find ways to prevent or reverse age-related decline in humans. But beyond the practical applications, beyond the potential medical advances, there's something deeply meaningful about simply knowing these animals exist. In a world that often feels rushed, where we're constantly aware of time slipping away, where aging and mortality loom over every human experience, It's somehow comforting to know that somewhere in the ocean, a clam is sitting on the seafloor, filtering water just as it has for 500 years. Somewhere in the Arctic, a shark is gliding through the darkness, following paths it's followed for 4 centuries. Somewhere off Antarctica, a sponge is growing, adding another microscopic layer to a skeleton that's been building for 15,000 years. These creatures remind us that time is relative. Our human perspective, our decades-long lifespans, our urgent sense of time passing quickly, that's not universal. It's just one way to experience existence. There are other ways, slower ways, ways that measure life not in breaths or heartbeats, but in centuries of quiet persistence. And perhaps, in learning about these different ways of being, we can find a new appreciation for our own time, however brief it might be by comparison. The ocean quahog doesn't worry about wasting time. The Greenland shark doesn't feel rushed. The glass sponge doesn't fear growing old. They simply exist, each in their own way, each following the biological program evolution has written for them. And in their existence, they offer us a gift, the knowledge that life can be longer, slower, more enduring than we ever imagined. That the cells and genes and molecular machines we're built from are capable of maintaining function across timescales that challenge our comprehension. That biology holds secrets we're only beginning to uncover. As you lie here tonight, drifting towards sleep, maybe you'll dream of deep ocean floors where ancient clams rest in the sediment, of Arctic waters where centuries-old sharks cruise through the darkness, of Antarctic depths where sponges older than civilization filter the same cold water they've filtered since the Ice Age. These creatures are out there right now, living their impossibly long lives, carrying within their cells the answers to questions we've barely learned how to ask. They're teachers, if we're willing to learn. Archivists of time, living proof that the limits we think are absolute are just the limits of our particular evolutionary path. Tomorrow, they'll still be there, just as they were yesterday, and the day before, and the century before that, growing slowly, persisting quietly, measuring time in a language we're only beginning to understand. And maybe, just maybe, their secrets will help us write new chapters in our own story. Chapters where aging slows, where health endures, where the time we have is measured not just in years, but in quality, in vitality, in the full expression of what human biology can become when we learn from the masters of longevity all around us. If this exploration of time and longevity has sparked your curiosity or helped you relax, consider subscribing to Bedtime Biology. Leave a comment below sharing which of these incredible animals surprised you most, or suggest topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes. And now, let these thoughts of ancient creatures and endless time carry you gently into sleep, where time moves differently still, where moments can stretch into hours, and where your own brief consciousness touches something larger, older, and more enduring than any single lifetime could contain. Good night.